Okay, private schools versus public schools. It is a real thing. Doesn't matter until it actually does. We're going to talk about it and how it affects the property market. Stay tuned.
I'm the ringleader, so listen up.
Cleo Whittier. There is no Whittier property manager in the country than Cleo Whittier. Good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you, Mark?
Very good, thanks. Very good, thanks. Property manager, 16 years. You've seen it all. My kids were listening to Teacher's Pet on a podcast when they were driving to Coffs Harbour, so they had lots of questions about Cromer High School for me over the weekend. You're putting Zeno into school applications at the moment. This school thing, like, it doesn't matter and no one cares until they do. And now it's a big thing.
It's true. It's so true. And it also doesn't even just start in high school. It starts in primary school. When you rent a property, when you buy a property and you're a parent, you're looking at your areas of schooling when you're purchasing and renting. So when I went to school, there wasn't such thing as zones. I don't feel that it was so black and white. If you lived here, you couldn't go to that school. You could just go to any school. There was placements in every school. It wasn't a big deal. As far as, if you lived in Narrabeen and you wanted to go to Mona Vale Public, or you went to Mona Vale Public and you want to go to Narrabeen Public. Now it's like a divide of the roads, and the applications are very serious when it comes to being accepted in certain schools. So we do get a lot of families that ask, do you have anything in Coco? Or my kid really wants to go to Coco Public because it's phenomenal. Harwood Public, phenomenal, very popular primary school, but it only has enough room for a certain amount of students. So if anything comes up in those areas for rent, whether there's a bedroom too small, no parking, it's old, they just jump on it because of the schooling. Has nothing to do with the needs of the property.
And for people that don't know, what happens then? So you give that lease in the school application, you submit that lease, then they say, okay, you're in the zone, and then that increases your chances?
Yeah, it's almost automatic. That's the only reason that you wouldn't be allowed to apply if you weren't from that zone. So these leases are very important from primary school on up. And then you're also looking at, tertiary education. So you're looking at high schools then from there. So you've also got to plan ahead for that zoning then. I had a friend and client that needed a property in the Stella Maris catchment, and he was happy to pay, the whole lease just so he could get his kid into this school without being there.
So and again, I'm going to break this down to be real simple for some people. Because obviously there's even people that watch the show that are overseas. So I want to break this down. So if you go through the public system, that's for free. If you go through the private system, there's a certain cost, but it escalates as you get closer to year 12, being 1 to 12. So what are you paying for a private school in Northern Beaches these days?
Anywhere up from 11,000 to 25,000 a year for the first few years in high school.
Solid.
Yeah, and I believe there are schools that exceed that, obviously. This juncture in my life, my son being 11, all I do is ask the girls in the office that have had all their kids come out of high school, one of our lovely Nikki, she puts 3 in St. Luke's. I was like, oh my God, like huge expense. And, it was one of the top schools for TR results last year. So understandably, they can charge that much. But, I was of the mindset. Well, I'm from that generation, you know, where I'm, you know, a Gen X. I don't care. I left it to last minute applications. I was like, what do you mean it's going to be in now for the beginning of year 5? I was like, I was waiting till like year 6, see how it goes, and then no. You have to be way more prepared.
So where did you go?
I went to MARTA in Warriewood. I
That's
started in
private?
92 and finished in 97. I remember a speech our year 10 coordinator or year 9 coordinator gave. I won't say his name, but he was a legend. He just said, because back then, MARTA's still co-ed Catholic, but you know, you still paid school fees that exceeded public schooling. It wasn't private, so not very expensive, a little bit above average. Anyway, he basically stood up for the year and he said, you lot, he pointed to a bunch of kids that were not paying any attention or whatever, and he goes, save your parents the school fees, go to Narrabeen. Don't even bother wasting your time. I was like, wow.
It got their attention. So you went through private and you've sent your kids to public
Yes. So I
for the
sent
first.
Zeno to a public school in Monavale because at that time he was an only child before
Yep.
my daughter. And we
Yep.
thought, well, he needs to be in a big school with lots of kids and not a little niche Catholic school, because we thought that he would be better to that sort of environment exposure.
Yep.
Then we changed our minds and thought, well, we would prefer him to go to a couple of the local Catholic schools that were a little bit smaller. And at that point, they were full. They had no more placements. So that put the kibosh on that. And plus now he's not an only child. He's got a 3-year-old sister. So, you know, it didn't make any difference.
Yeah, right. Because I went through Cromer High School and I never even thought twice about it. And when I met Lisa and kids came along, school came along, then it was, I sort of didn't even think about it. Probably sounds really silly, but by default, sort of Lisa was like, book the kids in. And then it was like go time, and then obviously school fees and stuff. Like it's a hell of a lot of money. The kids went through private, you know, where we brought the kids up, around around sort of in the east. There wasn't a lot of public school selection like the Northern Beaches. So it was probably more of a natural progression. And actually, the weirdest thing was when I was in my early 20s and Lisa and I met and got married, no one spoke about school in the Northern Beaches. And whenever I went to a function in the East, it was always, what school did you go to? And I always found that really, really weird, because I was like, you know, is that like within the first couple of sentences, people are like, what school did you go to? And I never had that before in the Northern Beaches. I'm like, this is weird.
You know
So
why?
anyway, why?
Because on the Northern Beaches, the public schools and the schools around here were all of the same culture. We were a surf culture when we grew up. It was about bands, it was about beach. It wasn't about academics or schooling. So it didn't really matter who's who in the zoo. We all just wanted to surf, be a famous pro surfer, go to listen to live music. And so all the
That's weird.
schools were that sort of way inclined. It wasn't, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a doctor, you need to go to this kind of schooling.
Yeah, like it was. I think Lisa's just dobbed me in. I missed. So then I started sort of getting annoyed by the question, and I thought, you know, if you can't beat them, join them. So I actually told people I went to grammar,
Yep.
and they went, grammar? You're a grammar boy? And I was like, yeah, yep, grammar boy. Yep, through and through. But but it's so okay. So for anyone who doesn't know, it's a real thing, guys and girls. Merits for going to a private over a public for Zeno. Can you explain that in the Northern Beaches? I do think it's different Northern Beaches, eastern suburbs, inner west, because of things you said like surf cultures and stuff like that. Why have you gone down the rabbit hole of private now?
You know, the school that we're choosing is not so much as private, it's more just a Christian school, a Catholic school. So I do feel like we want religion in our son's life. In our lives, we are, you know, Christian, and the discipline aspect of that as well. Um, you know, public schooling is great, but we just feel our son needs a little bit more of that nudge into, you know, a certain type of, you know, grooming, as you would say. Not, you know, not like the Pope grooming sort of stuff, but grooming as in, you know, the way that you look, the way that you dress, the way just, I mean, the public schools still have emphasis of that, but there's not a lot of, I don't think, repercussions. I remember when I was in high school, if your hair elastic wasn't the right color, you were up to the office and you were in trouble and you had to change it. You could only have one earring. It was like there were certain rules, and I think
Undies.
that we need those rules.
I think it was an elderly person was telling me, the mother-in-law mom. So I can't remember someone telling me that they used to check undies all being the same color. I couldn't imagine that these days. It's changed. Before
Some
we
of your
go,
pants.
apparently it's true. Before we go, how has it intrinsically affected rents or property values as to the areas that you are? Would you say, like you've obviously acknowledged there's a difference and people do chase a postcode, but would you say the rents are higher or the sales prices are higher as a result of it?
I don't think so, no, because I think we've got an even spread of schooling, of all public schooling. For example, my area, you've got Narrabeen High, Pittwater High, Barrenjoey High. They're all great schools for whatever reason, and they're all, you know, evenly spread. So I don't think that it really affects our rental prices, no. Apart from Curl and Freshie, for some reason, those little pockets there in Hardwood and
Yeah.
Freshwater,
It's a real thing.
their
Hey?
rents are higher for that reason.
I would agree with you. I think on the Northern Beaches, the one that I'll hear the most is that curl.
Yeah.
That curl. Public school people bloody love it.
They do. They love it. It's a real community and they want to get in there. Look, we're not nervous about it. I don't feel like there's any wrong choice really where we live. I think everywhere there are good teachers, good people, families are spread, all our families and friends will be spread out at all schools. So it's not the all in a, you know, it's not going to end our lives, but at the same time, it's an interesting time, that's for sure. But yeah, I've got a funny fact as well. When we're in high school, if you wore the wrong jewelry, then they confiscated it off you. You had to buy it back for $2.
No, that's so wrong. That would have been 2 meat pies back then.
That's that person's lunch money in the office.
That would have been the lunch money. Cleo, thanks for sharing public versus private on the Northern Beaches. Hope you guys enjoyed this show, and have a beautiful day.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
See ya. Bye.